Both Claude and GitHub have had recent blog posts detailing how to write a good Claude or agents.md file. This is really important because the only context that Claude has when you start a new session is the claude-md file. Claude does not look at the directories or files in your project, doesn't read the documentation. It really has almost no idea except for what's in the claude-md. So it's really important to give Claude as much help with this as possible. Now there is an init command which will create a new claude-md file if it doesn't exist. And this should be your first step on any new project. It can also be used to update an existing claude-md file, but this command is not as detailed as these two blog posts. And I also then went through 20 of my own projects and looked for what useful patterns could I extract into a plugin. If you copy the installation instructions from the video description and then run Claude as you normally do, you will see that there is now a new command here, claude-md-bp, that's for best practices. The first thing this is going to do is check if you do have an existing claude-md file. This is a brand new Rails application, and I have already run the init command, so we're good there. The first question Claude's going to ask you is what mode do you want to run in? There's three options. The first is to address each point together with Claude one by one. Option 2 is to ask Claude to review all the points and then show you recommendations at the end. And the third option is to write the analysis to an audit file so that it could be, for example, shared with your team in a PR. Let's choose option 1 and go through the process step by step. If we review the checkpoints, the first one is directory structure. Now, this is really important because it's going to allow Claude in the rest of this process to really kind of like understand where your files are and how they're arranged in directories. And the first thing it's going to do is run the free command to get that information. As you can see, there is a new task management interface that's been introduced in Claude 2.1.17, which makes it a bit more explicit when Claude is working through a to-do list. Fortunately, it makes the output a little bit confusing because we're seeing the task status at the bottom, but Claude's actual response here is above it. So, you know, in typical Anthropic fashion, I don't know if they really test things before releasing, but it doesn't work exactly the way I think it should. Anyway, we've got some recommendations. According to claude-md, there is no directory structure defined, and recommendation for this best practice guide is to add a short section explaining what the directory structure looks like and the kind of files that we have inside there. So that looks good. Let's add that. So I'm telling Claude to update the claude-md file, and it's asking for permission, and there it's adding in that basic directory structure into our claude-md. Let's have a look and see. We're on to point 2 now, and here is our output above the to-do item. So concrete, not abstract. the idea here is, does the Claude MD have real code examples, not abstract kind of principles, but real code examples that Claude can understand what kind of code you're looking to write? The minor improvement that's been recommended here is that is to link in this example, this Rubicop example. So I'll say, okay, add that. So you don't have to agree with Claude's recommendations. If you've got some other ideas of how this should work, just tell Claude and it will update the document in the way that you want. So we're on to point 3, which is my favorite point, project overview. And the idea with this one is, what exactly is the purpose of the project? What are we trying to do? And I really recommend running this task, this claude-md best practices when you're starting a new project, because it'll actually help you to define your project goals and overview. So it says that the claude-md file doesn't state what this app actually does. So I'm going to tell it that this is an API for deciding when it would be a good time to go fishing. And I also want to explain that this is not a weather. So this is going to help Claude every time you start a new session to kind of like focus you on the kind of core idea of your app, if you know what I mean. We're going on to step 4 here, which is the roadmap and goals. And it's telling us that there's no roadmap section in claude-md and no roadmap document. So the idea here is to define a high-level roadmap for the project in your documents directory, and then link that into your claude-md, so that when you start the project, Claude is not going to read your roadmap, but it knows where the roadmap is. So if you do start talking about the roadmap, Claude knows where that is. It's linked from your claude-md file. And it's making some recommendations here because our app is going to be on fishing. It's saying, well, it wants to talk here about core entities, fishing spots, conditions, predictions. Well, I'm not too sure exactly what it means by this, but let's say add the roadmap and the basic outline. And we can see, we'll have a look and see what it comes up with. But in essence here, at this point, you can really define whatever you want. It's really kind of like an interactive process where it gets you to think about what are the kind of key to-do items that you want to tick off in the next couple of days, weeks, months, that are not only important to you, but your team. We're now moving on to domain model. So it's telling us that there's no schema or models yet. It's a brand new application. Now it's asking, would you like to create the domain model in the docs directory? And then it's actually making some recommendations on what those entities and relationships could be. So fishing spots, conditions, tides, moon phases, pressure, temperature, some kind of prediction model? Do you need a user model? And it's really kind of like guiding you through defining the core of your application, but at the same time, it's keeping your ClaudeMD file relatively slim, and then linking to your core documents. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of these points, but as you can see, the other kind of like key checkpoints are going to be architecture, coding standards, testing, a list of commands and workflow. Well, it's basically commands grouped by different workflows, infrastructure section, environment setup, MCP server configs, Git workflow, Claude's role. This is quite an interesting one. It's basically defining how Claude should behave. Is Claude a back-end developer, a front-end developer? Is Claude going to write documentation? What's Claude's role? And as you can see here, we're not getting the actual full list of to-dos. There's still 4 pending items over here. If I switch over here, you'll see that there's also number 15, Claude's permissions, which will be what things, for example, you don't want Claude to do. So for example, I don't like Claude to do my commits. I like to do my own commits. You can tell Claude in the ClaudeMD file what things it should never do. You can also define your external dependencies, and it then, point 17, does a validation scan to check for any glaring issues in your ClaudeMD. And then 18 is an evaluation and trim. So this focuses really on making sure that your ClaudeMD is stuffed to the brim with all the kind of amazing context it needs to get busy, but also it doesn't need, your ClaudeMD file should still be 100 lines, or kind of 150 lines is probably pushing it. So it will offer to trim it down if it's getting a bit too big. If you'd like some more information on how to optimize your ClaudeMD, please leave a comment in the video description.